This is on the TANAKA THT 210B. I'm just going to have a look at it, see what's wrong with it, try and get it running. I've already sprayed some carb cleaner straight down the throat of the carb and it popped off, so I'm hoping it's a runner. So I'm going to take the gearbox off first. I think on this it's just 4 hex screws holding it in. So there's one here. Pretty sure that's all that's holding this on. Right, now I think that frees it up. Yeah. So it just gets rid of the handle, and then just needed to take off the air filter cover, disconnect the kill wire and the throttle cable. Now this just comes out. So trust me when I say that's actually quite an easy one to get apart. You have some little anti-vibration, I think they are, or I think they're rubber mounts. They just sit inside these, so don't lose them. There's 4 of them on each one of these bolts. So that just gets rid of the handle out of the way. 2 nuts and 2 Allen bolts. Just crack them. Here we go. So that's 1, 2. If you see any cuts in the video, it's because I'm taking a while to get the bolts out. I just think it's best to skip. They're all coming out relatively easy considering how rusty they are. Get these nuts free. There's not enough room to get an impact in there, so you're just going to have to try and get in there with a spanner. There we go. One's loose. Do something to this one. Couple of half turns. That's loose as well. So that should be the gearbox off. That's gone into the exhaust cover. Yeah, you can feel it's loose now. Alright, let's get these bolts out and then I'll rescue that other bolt from the exhaust cover. There we go. There we go. So what I'll do is put them back on. Right, so they're all screwed back in now, so they can't be lost. While you're here, you can have a little look at the clutch springs. I'm going to probably take the tank off. Before I do, have a quick look in the tank. always check. I'll always check the seal on a cap, just in case, because it's nothing worse than doing the whole machine, putting the cap back on, putting fuel in it, and then it starts just pouring out. And the hedge cutters, you've got them all different angles. 9 times out of 10 the fuel's going to hit that at some point, whereas with a strimmer you've normally got it pointed at the floor, so it's not that important. But right, I think it's just 2 hex screws of the smaller one, I believe. Yeah. So this is going to be hard to turn. I normally use one of these just to give myself a bit of leverage. There we go. So that's the tank. Now the tank, the fuel lines don't look great, but the grommets don't actually look that bad. I'm not sure. They're not moving much, so okay, so that goes back into the tank, that goes from there to there, so that one goes to that pipe. So taking it off, this big grommet's the one with the fuel filter on the end of it, that comes out, goes into this pipe here. This purge bulb, first hose is connected to the bottom of the carb there, and then it will bring the fuel back out of this one that's loose back into the tank. So you just got to remember that when you put it back together, because I'm probably going to have to change the fuel lines. The fuel lines will be knackered. I mean, if I can reuse some of it, I will. They don't feel that bad, but probably will reuse them. Stick the screws back in. Don't want to lose anything. If the video ever cuts or anything, it's just because something might be taking a bit longer than intended. I want to try and keep the videos as short as possible if I can. But it doesn't always work out that way. So let's take this off now. 2 Phillips. And that just takes the whole thing off. If you can, it might seem a bit, you know, a bit trampish. Try and save the gaskets. This one here, you might not seem it. Reuse that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a bit dirty. I'll clean it up. Nothing wrong with that at all. To be honest, it actually looks in fairly good condition. If I open up the carb and it's not too bad, I'm going to try and get away with just sticking some fuel lines in it and see what happens. Right, so don't lose anything. To be honest, there's a rubber ring here that seals it into that gap. and it come off as I was taking it apart. Just make sure you don't lose it. So then we've got everything off now. I think this purge bolt's probably alright, but I have got plenty of them and they're cheap, so I'll probably just put a new one on. So keep all that there. That can all just be cleaned. This manifold looks pretty okay. I normally always pressure wash stuff at the end. I never do it at the beginning. The reason I don't do it at the beginning is because even though it's nice to work on something clean, you don't really want to be scrubbing something that ain't even going to work by the time you've finished working on it. You're better off doing it at the end when you know it's actually worth scrubbing it to death. Where's that screw? So let's have a look in the carb, because 9 times out of 10, if you know small engines especially, normally the problems are fuel related. Like I say, I sprayed some fluid in it and it popped off, so I kind of wish I'd done that on video now, but it doesn't really matter too much. You'll just have to take my word for it. Yeah, I sprayed some fluid in it, it popped off, so this should be worth doing. Sometimes these are welded on. Don't want to put it too hard, just in case. Sometimes giving it a little tap can get it off. You can already tell that's pretty knackered. It's just stuck down. Again, and if it comes off with the gasket, not a good sign. Can you hear that? We all know that's not a good sound if you've ever put diaphragms in a bit of lawn equipment. That is a horrible sound. This is one of the worst ones I've ever heard, to be honest. That is really, sounds like snapping bits of plastic. Sometimes you can get away with the needle, and that actually looks really good, really clean. I mean, these diaphragms are soft, so that's normally what takes the brunt. So all I've done is I've just sprayed a little layer of carb cleaner over this, scrubbed it to agitate it a bit, and then sprayed another layer of it over. So I'm just going to let that sit there and seep in to all the scratches that I've made. While that's doing that, I'm just going to clean this and this. Might as well just use, to be honest, I just normally use fairy washing up liquid and some warm water. You just got to make sure when you put it all back together that it's dry. So that's what we'll do now quickly while that's seeping in. Just before I wash this, I'm just going to pop this primer bulb out because I'm going to put a new one in. I've got some of these anyway. This one's probably fine, but trust me when I say you're better off just putting a new one on. So I'm just popping that out of there. It's just got 2 clips on the back. You just squeeze them together and it just pops out, and when you push a new one on, they just push in and click in. So I'm just going to go and wash these, and then by the time I've done that, that would have seeped in enough. So I just looked through my parts and I've actually got a brand new diaphragm with gasket, and I've actually got a new pumping diaphragm and gasket. I thought I'd run out, but I've actually got some, so that's good, because I mean, the old pumping diaphragm doesn't look that bad, but the flaps for the check valves aren't completely flat. That one's curled a little bit, and this bit here's bubbled up. So instead of risking it, I'm just going to put a new one on it. And if you ever put a new diaphragm, you might as well put a new gasket for it, because this feels thin, almost like paper. So that's them. This is just completely knackered, this diaphragm. So now what you want to do is get each part of your carb. This is obviously where your meter and diaphragm and everything goes. You want to try and clean this old gasket off from around here without doing too much damage, obviously. I normally use like a green scourer side of a sponge, because it's just tough enough to get stuff off, but not too tough that it's going to scratch it so much that it's going to, you know, make it uneven and damage it too much. As long as you're kind of gentle with it, just scrub it, spray it with a bit of carb spray and scrub it. Like what I'm doing now is you can even pick the thick bits off with your nail. Yeah, so you just want to take this layer of stuff off. Do that to begin with. So I've cleaned these out now, the air filter housing and the cover. I'll probably just leave them in the sun to dry out. If you've got a compressor, obviously you can blow out any excess water, but I'll just leave them in the sun. By the time I've done all this, they'll be dry. So now I would, that's it. So this is soaking enough. So I'll just get one of these and just gently scrub that off. This is how I do it. I mean, there's plenty of ways of doing it. Basically, you just want to clean it without damaging the surface too much. But you also want to get as much of the old gasket off as possible. I'm going to spray that again, because there's a little layer on there still. And just leave it sit for a bit longer. So while that's doing that again, what I'll probably do is get this part of your carb, and you know, don't go mad and just hold down the spray. Just spray it, just give it a quick spray like down the throat of the carb, from the other end, back down the throat of the carb, but from the other side, like this, all over this face, because there'll probably be loads of cack stuck to that you can't see, just all over it. Then just leave that to one side. Get the other, I mean that other part can wait for a minute. This plate, just get that spray off. I wouldn't bother spraying your needle, purely because it's the one with the rubber tip. You don't want carb spray to sit on anything rubber for a long period of time, because what it will do is make that tip swell up. That tip right there, that will swell up, and it will stop this from sealing. So then you'll start getting leaks through your needle and seat. So I would just spray the side where the rubber isn't. Sometimes you have a rubber seat, so I'd spray the tip of the needle if you've got a rubber seat. If you've got a rubber tip on your needle, then I'd spray the metal seat, which is what I've just done. I won't bother spraying the lever or the spring or anything. Just make sure they've got no dirt stuck to them. You can give them a little spray, but you're just risking losing it. So all I'll do now is get as much of this gasket off as possible again. It ain't got to be perfect. I've had it where I've had a whole layer on there still and it's still sealed. as long as you get any lumps and bumps out of it, it'll be fine. So now I'd get this and I'd just give that a proper spray through everywhere, mainly where your needle seats and through your intake pipe and returning pipe, and just make sure they're clear, which they are. And then on this side, just give it a spray all over again, and then in these little holes in the seat from the other side, and this screen especially, that screen especially. So that's all that done. So now what I'll do is just get this back together again. Start putting your carb back together. So what I would do is start with this side. Now on your pumping side, this is the same on all 2-stroke carbs as well. Look, all the holes line up. So that's your diaphragm. And what you want on your pumping side is you want your diaphragm, which is this bit, to sit flat on this plate. You want your diaphragm on first, because these little flaps are what pump your fuel. So they've got to be sat flat against them holes, like that. Then you put your gasket on the top. And they're all the same shape, so you can only get them one way, like that. So on that pumping side, diaphragm first on the flat plate, gasket after, just like that. Then you can get the other side of your plate, and it should all slot in. It has locating pins, so it should all line up and slot in like that. There we go. That's how it should look. Then you can get, let's see if we can, right, so then we want to get your needle and seat and everything lined up. This is the tricky bit, because this needle always wants to jump out. So what I'd do is I'd try not to play with this spring too much, because it will just go flying. And the first time I ever did a 2-stroke carb, I was actually doing all right, and then the needle just went, the spring just went flying. So there's the spring sat in that crevice, which is also the same as any 2-stroke carb, sat in a little crevice down there. Then what I normally do is I normally drop the needle in to where that's going to. So now you've got your spring, and then your needle's just there in that little dip. Then you've got your little arm with the rod on it, and that's got to sit. You'll see how it sits together anyway. But one side's got almost a pincer. That's got a hook under, so it looks like that. So the pincer side hooks under the lip of your needle, and then the rest of it, that rod slots in this gap. And you've got to make sure you hold this all together while you're doing it, because otherwise you're going to lose something. And you've got a little screw that just holds it in. Don't over tighten it, it just needs to hold it down. So then that is what it looks like at the end. You've got your spring under this, so where this little circle is here, your spring's sat under there. Your needle's in that dip down there, and one side hooks under the needle, and this circle side sits on the spring. So you've got to kind of hook it under and sit it down on the spring, and then you put this screw in and it holds it all in. Now you just put your new diaphragm and gasket on that way round. Again, it's got locating pins, so that way round. Get your plate, whack your plate on there, get your screws in and just button it down. So I'm just going to put these 4 screws in, tighten them down. So we've got everything buttoned back down. That's how it should look. I think it's had a clean out. You can spray and clean the outside of it if you feel you have to. I don't normally bother unless I'm trying to be really thorough, but it's just personal preference. That's fine to me. So now we need to turn our attention to the tank. Now the outside of the tank doesn't matter too much, it's the inside that matters. The fuel filter doesn't look great, so we're just going to pop the grommet out first. I normally use a flat head, but I don't use a sharp pointed one. I use one of these because they're kind of blunt at the edges, because otherwise you just end up piercing it. If it's a good grommet, see, this is probably okay, this grommet. You'll know when they're not okay because they'll just come straight out. Trust me to drop that. So you just want to get under it, but gently do it, don't push it too much, and it will eventually come out. I might need something a little bit smaller for this one. What have I got here? Let's try this. There we go. Just want to take your time with it really, so you can get the grommet off now. And that's actually okay. Oh, I'm dropping a lot of stuff today, engines and grommets. You can't really tell by looking, not all the time anyway, but that's actually okay. What you want to do is you want to feel if it's still got play. If it's rock hard, it ain't no good. So we can just take this fuel line out and fuel filter, inspect that a bit. Yeah, because look at that. I don't know if that's any good, but it just stinks of oil, and that probably means it's been filtering the oil out of the machine. I'm going to leave that in some fuel. I like recycling stuff. I hate using new parts when you don't need them. So what I'm going to do is, the fuel lines I'll have to replace, I think. You know, they're a bit knackered, the fuel lines and the primer. But that, I reckon I could save that with dunking that in some fuel. So I'm just going to dip that in, get some fuel lines and primer bulb, and I'll be back with you. Right, so I've got the fuel lines and everything ready now. The way I do fuel lines is I just check not only this circle in the middle, the inner diameter, but I check the outer diameter as well, because you want it to go into this grommet tight, but you also want the fuel to be able to go through it right as well. So you check this side as well, check that this goes on here snug. It's got to be snug. You know, if you're not struggling to get your fuel lines in, they're probably too loose. So this is the return line. I might as well put it in now. So I always cut a thin bit like that. It's easier to get it in. You can push that thin bit right through, and if you do struggle to push the rest through, which it normally you do, you can grab it at the other end. So sometimes you can get away with just edging it in yourself, you know. You'll feel it go in anyway. Sometimes you can just give it a little twist and some pressure and it will go in enough. you know, this is only your return, it's not got to be right in there. So that's the return put in. Now what I'll do is I'll put my fuel filter side on. So I just get my grommet, same thing, I've cut the end of that, push that in, and then you might have to ease it in, but once you've got a bit through you can just pull it through. So what I normally do is I get the tank like this, I normally hold the grommet roughly where it's going to be, and I'll just pull it down until this is right in the bottom of the tank. This has got a heavy weight filter. This is a good used one that I had. I left the other one that come out of the machine in some fuel, but this is a good used one. They're heavy because the tank sits up like this. Tank sits up like this. So this needs to weigh down so that the fuel's always hitting it, if that makes sense. So yeah, we'll put that on now. I'll snip the end of this off now. These can be a bugger to get on, but you know, it's the same thing. Give it a twist, a bit of pressure. It will take a bit of effort to get on, but that's good because it means it ain't going to come off again. Yeah, there we go. That is not going to come off. I've just realised something. This isn't a grommet that I can put on like that. That's how you normally put them on, because this is a different type of tank. Leave the fuel filter off, put the fuel line through, and then put the grommet in. Now normally how I do these is you can normally push these in with your fingers. If they don't go, push most of it in and just get a blunt screwdriver and slowly edge the lip of it in. Don't put too much pressure on it because you'll just break it. Just slowly. There we go, bush. And you'll feel it. It will sit snug and it won't move, it won't spin or anything. Now we can put this on. Normally you have a grommet where the fuel filter fits through the grommet hole, but on these it's quite small. So again, just put some pressure on it, give it a twist, get that right on there. There we go. Then you want to push that right into your tank. Make sure it drops right down. And you want to look in there, see where it is? It's not quite in enough. So push this in a bit more. Or even make it a bit easier. Pull it back out this hole. Pull it a bit more. Put it in a little bit more. And push it back down. So once you've got it through the grommet, it's easy to pull it. There we go. So now that's going to be right down there in the bottom end. So that's your two lines done there. What I would do now is I would get this and I would put the fuel tank back on now, just so you know where it's going to be, how it's going to be sat. No reason why we need to keep it off. I do pressure wash equipment, but I normally do it at the end. I normally do it once I've got it running. I don't see the point cleaning stuff if you don't know if they're even going to run or not. So now I'd put the tank back on, so you know how it's going to be positioned, how your fuel lines are going to be positioned. So it's just 2 Allen screws. I kept calling them hex screws earlier, I have no idea why. Me talking gibberish basically, but they're Allen screws. Most of this is Allen screws. Just 2 Allen screws with washers. Might as well tighten this up because this ain't going to be going anywhere now, this tank. Also, something else I didn't mention earlier, when I cleaned the plastics for the air filter housing, I gave this a little rinse out as well, just on the inside. So now you've got this side. And remember, so what you want to do now is get your gasket for your carb, make sure that's all lined up. Well, technically you don't have to put the gasket on yet. I'd just get this all lined up basically. Hang on, just need to go and get the air filter housing. Right, so I forgot the air filter housing. Obviously you need it for this one because the screws go all the way through. So I just put the screws in with this plate first into this. And then I normally get the carb the right way round, which is this way, because this ring goes into the space in there. So I'll put that on now. I think it's that way. Now the reason I do it this way is because trying to hold it, okay, it definitely doesn't go that way, because trying to hold it all against the machine and doing it is a nightmare. It's better to have it all on these screws lined up for you, like that. So you've got the whole thing together, all lined up. Then I'd even put this gasket on as well, which has got to line up with that hole. See that little hole there? That's got to line up. Then move your fuel lines out of the way for a second if you can. And just push this all on at once then. Key screwdriver. Doesn't have to be super tight straight away, just get it on. Might as well tighten it down. So that's all on and tightened down. So now you want to get the lines back out, like this. What we'll do is we'll put this line on. We can snip them later, don't have to worry too much about that now. In fact, I'm going to snip it now. Right, let's just readjust. Now what deal nut here forgot to do is snip the fuel line, because it's easier to push this on now than it is afterwards. Does that make sense? So I would, right, let's take all this off. Right. Because it can be quite hard to get these on. You need a bit of manoeuvrability to get them on. See, just taking that off allowed me to get it on easily. So I'd put that on first, which is what I normally do, but because I'm trying to talk at the same time, I completely forgot. Then I would push this on. It doesn't matter about the return line because you can cut that to suit afterwards. Line all this stuff. Part where we're kind of getting there now, after messing up a couple of things. I find it hard to talk and do it at the same time. This is why on my first video I just time lapse it, to be honest. Right, I'll pull this through here. It's probably the best thing to do with it. So now, just get that. Now the bubble's going to be sat in here, so probably about there is enough. So let's just snip that. grommets in there now. Now I don't know if you can have enough for them. Probably gonna have to take this off again. That's the problem with the machines that have a separate purge bulb, because normally they're on the carb, and normally you just go in and out of the carb. These ones you have to go into the carb, out of the carb, into the purge bulb, out of the purge bulb, into the tank, and it's a right pain. It becomes a bit of a pain. So let's just get this all. So this is only going to be going. This is only going to be a short pipe. So this is the one that draws the fuel up, and that's the long one. So the long one has a pipe going from it to the carb, which is this pipe here, and then the short one just goes straight back into the tank. It's just a bit of a pain to get to. That's why I hate these ones. Just I find them really stupidly set up. You know, better off just having it all on the carb. There we go, right. Now we can do what I was going to do. So basically what I'd do is leave all of it loose, get the pipes in where they're meant to be first, everywhere, you know, get all your pipes in everywhere they're supposed to be, then worry about doing this bit afterwards. The pipes are kind of holding everything in the right spot as well, so it's actually in a way made it a bit easier. So once again, everything's together. Everything's together. That just needs to go on there. And then what we're going to do next is put some fuel in it, see if it primes, or purges rather. It's definitely a lot better now. Now it's got some new fuel lines on it. It's got nearly a new fuel filter on it. Pretty sure I've got air filters for this as well. Just make sure these grommets are pushed right down. Don't want nothing leaking. Right. So I'm just going to put some fuel in it quickly, and we'll see if it wants to prime. So the return is from the long one to the tank. See, now it's going all the way through now. That's what it should be doing. I always get confused with these ones. You know, if you put it on there and it's not priming properly, it's probably backwards. Simple as that. I just did the same thing and I've done loads of these, so I just managed to get backwards myself. So yeah, I'm just going to put everything back on again. Get everything lined up again. I'm not doing it all by hand this time, it takes too long. Snug them down, but I'm just quickly trying to speed up. Right, so now this should, I already know that grommets aren't great because the fuel is coming through them, seeping through them a little bit, but that's how it should be. It's priming, the bubbles filling back up with fuel. I mean, by all accounts this should start now, really. I don't know if it's going to hit the clutch, going to hit the thing. No, let's try and start it. basically. Let's give it another prime just in case. But yeah, it should at least start now. Stop having all this on here. Spilling my tea now. Okay, so it's not wanting to start, but it might be because I might need to turn the idle screw in a bit. It should start, you know. So it's running, it's all good. It sounds like it's running fine as well. I think it just took a while to get it to start on the choke, to be honest. So that's actually the engine side done, because there's nothing else wrong with it. I might pop out this spark plug and see what's going on, what sort of spark plug it is, because I know it's a torch, which I don't really like them, but I mean, it's starting and running on the torch, so I'm going to leave that in there for now. I'm going to leave it in there just until we sort out the rest of the machine. So apart from the two grommets in there, those two grommets, this is actually okay. Starts and runs fine. Let's give it another go. Yep, that's all good. So that's the fuel lines and everything done. Grommets, cheap, and you know how to put them in because I've just done it. So that's that side of that machine done. I just need to concentrate on the handle, just need to clean up. The cable works fine. When I'm pulling the trigger, it's coming through. These are all clean. That's your kill switch. Switch sounds okay. The only thing, it does lock. The trigger does lock as well. So the little lock button there, that does work. That just needs cleaning, really. That's got nothing wrong with it. So I'll put that down there. So now we will end this video, and part 2 will be on the gearbox side of this engine. So clean up a little bit, start doing the gearbox.